Hey guys, so today I'm going to be doing the all about my eyeshadow tag, or is it just the eyeshadow palette tag? Something like that. Anyway, this is a video that's been going around that was started by Samantha March and Allie Glines. They did a collaboration where they basically kind of talked about their collection a little bit and answered some questions. And ever since I saw their videos, I have been wanting to do this video, but it's been about a month now, so I'm definitely late to the game. And a lot of YouTubers, at least that I follow in the beauty community, have done this video, and it's always been so fun to watch. So let's go ahead and get started. I have the questions right here on my iPhone, which is why I'm glancing over here. So the first, I guess these aren't questions, they're like tasks. The first task is show your newest palette, and that for me would be the Poise Black Magic palette from Uma Beauty. I think that's the full name. Yeah, I think the actual name of this palette is Poise, and it is from Uma Beauty. And I did a whole dedicated video to Uma Beauty because I purchased like a bunch of their stuff. A concealer, which I'm loving, foundation, this eyeshadow palette. Anyway, so I just recently purchased this from Ulta and I'm loving it. It's got 10 shades. It has 6 mattes and 4 shimmers. This one right here is so phenomenal. It is so beautiful. I will link to this video down below in my description box if you're interested, but this is my newest eyeshadow palette. My oldest eyeshadow palette is, well, it's kind of this one. So this is the Viseart Neutral Mattes palette. This is one of the very first palettes I ever purchased, but it was in the old packaging, and they actually sent me the Neutral Mattes palette now in their new packaging, which has this kind of like soft closure, and all of these pans are magnetized. So the Neutral Mattes palette is definitely the oldest palette that I can remember purchasing, but this particular one is definitely newer to my collection. But this palette is like iconic. This is like the eyeshadow palette. So I remember kind of getting into makeup and thinking, oh my gosh, like this is the palette that I need to get, that I need to start with. Viseart had such a great reputation. I just loved the colors in here. I thought I could do so many different things. And obviously this is something that could be paired with other palettes really easily. And I had a few makeup artist friends back when I was living in New York City. And anytime I mentioned thinking about getting this palette, they were like, get it. Get it. You will not regret it. Absolutely love it. And as makeup artists, I think they were telling me that they were like on their 5th one or something. So anyway, I was like, okay, I have to get it. So this is definitely one of the oldest palettes in my collection. I think anything older than this, I've either tossed or given away or donated or something. So this is definitely the oldest one that I can think of. Okay, the most expensive eyeshadow palette would be the Natasha Denona 28 pan palettes. So I have both. One is the green and brown, and one is the purple blue. So this is the purple blue. I believe these are, at least in the US, they retail for $239 each, and they have 28 shadows. And then this is the green brown. I love these eyeshadow palettes, and I was very late to the game on this one. I think these are what put Natasha Denona basically on the map. These were kind of like the first big eyeshadow palettes that she came out with. And at that time I was just kind of like, you know, dipping my toes back into makeup, and this was so intimidating to me. Just seeing all of these different colors and different finishes, and I just was like, oh no. And I thought to myself, gosh, I will never ever need so many eyeshadow colors. What would I do with all of that? Well, look at us now. So these are the most expensive eyeshadow palettes I have in my collection. All right, so next up is your most affordable palette, and I have these Lorac Diamond and Pearl, like these Hollywood Glamour, actually mini palettes. And these were, I believe, a collaboration with Rachel Zoe, and each of these palettes are $15, and I think they may even be on sale now. So I believe these are my least expensive palettes in my collection. I just decluttered a ColourPop palette, but I think even that one was maybe $16. So yeah, I'm pretty sure these are the least expensive palettes I have in my collection. All right, next up we have, oh my gosh, show your everyday palette. Okay, I totally cheated. I have 3 palettes to show you because I have a lot of everyday palettes. I really am a neutral lover. I have a lot. So the first one I wanted to show you is the Natasha Denona Camel palette. I love this one. I traveled with this one quite a bit. I hope in the future to travel again and bring this along with me. But this is a great everyday palette. I love the neutral shades in here. I love that you can amp it up with this like shimmery shade. Really beautiful. So that is definitely one of my everyday palettes. One that I've also reached for quite a bit is this Victoria Beckham Smoky Eye Brick in Tuxedo. This one is kind of like my cooler toned everyday palette versus the Camel, which is as you can see, much warmer. But I love this. You can see that there are some really nice finishes to these shadows. They're not matte, and they just leave this like really beautiful sheen to the eyes, and they're very easy to use. This is incredibly compact and small. I just love these smoky eye bricks. So that one is Tuxedo. And then the last one I'll mention, I'm sorry, is the Noir Fume from Tom Ford. So I really love, as you can tell, I really love these two shimmer shades. I can pretty much put this kind of like all over my lid and get away with just that. Or if I just want to add a little bit of dimension, I'll add this. And if I really kind of want to smoke it out, I can add this shade in there and I can blend with this one. So this one is just a great, great quad. This one is definitely my favorite quad out of the newer ones that he released like back in January. This one's my favorite. So those are my everyday eyeshadow palettes, and I actually had more pulled out to talk about, but I think we're only supposed to be showing one, and the other ones that I had are already discontinued. So anyway, those three are my everyday eyeshadow palettes. Next up is show your most colorful palette, and I don't have a lot of colorful palettes, so this actually was not difficult to come up with. This is the Viseart Editorial Brights palette. This is their number 8 palette, and this is definitely by far my most like rainbow bright eyeshadow palette. I have the Scott Barnes Color Bomb palette, but even that one, it just has like that hot pink and there's that blue, but then everything else is a little bit more subdued, especially compared to this. And then I do have the larger Viseart palettes, which have a lot of color to them, but this one is the most like rainbow bright out of all of them. So I decided to go with this one. And next is show your smallest palette. So I've already talked about these. I think it's a tie between the Lorac and the Victoria Beckham, because the Lorac is a little bit taller than the Victoria Beckham, but the Victoria Beckham is a little bit wider than the Lorac. So I think they're probably very, very similar. But yeah, these are definitely two of my smallest palettes, aside from my single shadows, but I don't think those count. So yeah, it's a tie between these two. And then my biggest palette is this Adept Cosmetics like magnetic palette. So I didn't know if we were talking about like customized palettes or anything like that, but I figured let me go ahead and show this to you. So this houses all of my Surratt single shadows and Surratt blushes. So this guy is like huge, and it is double-sided, and it's got this plastic bit in the middle. I love this palette. So those are all of my single Surratt shadows down here, and then all my blushes up here. So this is definitely by far my biggest palette. Let me just hold it up next to the Natasha Denona 28 palette. I thought this was actually bigger, but it's not. The Adept Cosmetics palette is definitely bigger. I knew it was gonna be thicker, but I thought like just surface area, it was gonna be larger, but it's not. It is definitely smaller. Okay, next is show your palette with the best memory. I had to pull out my Pat McGrath Mothership 1 Subliminal palette. I had been such a longtime fan of Pat McGrath. I remember cutting out, you know, Vogue magazine articles about her, you know, back in the 90s when she was doing the makeup for all the, you know, like the original supermodels. And I was such a big fan of hers. And then she started coming out with those Labs kits, which I loved before they were released on Sephora. So when she was like coming out with her actual like makeup line and she was starting out with these eyeshadow palettes, I could not have been more excited. This was just such a phenomenal moment, I think, in like makeup history. And being that this was the first one and my favorite out of the original 3 that she came out with, this one definitely has the best memories for me. And I love this one. This is one of my favorite Pat McGrath palettes. So I would have to say this Pat McGrath Mothership 1 palette. Good memories. And then a palette worth the hype. This was definitely really hard to narrow down, and I'm just going to talk about Pat McGrath palettes again, but I just think these are so worth the hype. There's a lot of hype surrounding all Pat McGrath makeup, but her eyeshadow palettes especially. They sell out really, really quickly. You know, there's always so much buzz around her releases. And I think they always, at least for me, they always kind of live up to the hype. I always think, how can she like outdo herself every single time? Yet she does. And I just love them all. And I just think that they are totally, totally worth the hype. Show a palette not worth the hype. So I don't know if there's been a lot of hype around these particular shadows or this particular colorway in this type of shadow, but I have this Dior Dream palette. And this is one of like their, just part of their regular line. I don't know if this is still around, I'm not even sure. But I picked this up because this color story just really spoke to me. I thought it was so pretty, and I had heard really, really good things about Christian Dior shadows. I don't like this palette at all, and hopefully I can demonstrate for you, but I'm just gonna go ahead and like swatch one of the colors, and it's really, really powdery, and then they just kind of blend away. Not a fan. And this was actually the darker one I was kind of playing around with earlier, but I'll do that one again. So here's the darker shade. And they just kind of like, if you continue to work them, they just kind of go away. And I thought, what is going on? You know, am I not using enough? You know, and I would just kind of like pack it on, but every time you would go and like start blending them out, they would just kind of blend away. So I'm just not a fan of this Dior Quint. And I just recently purchased one from their Color Games Summer 2020 collection. It has that pink and the orange in there. That one I really love. That one performed really well. The pigmentation was there. It didn't blend away. But there's something about this one and this color story, and I haven't tried any of the other color stories, so I can't speak to those. But this one for me just was not good. Just not a fan. All right, and then show your favorite palette from a favorite brand. So I, have showed actually a lot of my favorite palettes from favorite brands, like the Green Brown 28 pan from Natasha Denona is my favorite palette from her, or at least one of. It kind of goes between that one and like the Biba palette and go back and forth. But anyway, that is definitely one. The Subliminal palette from Pat McGrath, that is definitely a favorite of mine. So I wanted to show you one from a brand that I haven't mentioned yet, and that's NARS. And this palette has been discontinued. I don't know why. Why isn't this part of their regular line? This is the Loaded palette that came out probably a couple of years ago at this point. And I love this palette. I love the formula. I love the color story. I feel like it's a jazzed up version of this Viseart Neutral Mattes, probably because it has that kind of like rusty color in there, and it's there too. But the shimmers in here are really beautiful. The golds in here, this one is like a beautiful like shimmer color too. I really don't know why this is limited edition. I feel like this is such a great everyday neutral kind of palette that could work for almost anyone. It's stunning. And this is like my favorite NARS eyeshadow palette, hands down. It's just gorgeous. And last but not least, I am to show you my most used palette. So this is my Viseart custom palette, and I had a lot, this was all filled up, and I had a lot of shades in here from some of the Theory palettes and from the Neutral Mattes palette. But I try and put them back after I use a custom palette, otherwise I'm gonna forget where they originally came from, and I don't know, and that would really bug me. Anyway, whenever I kind of create a Viseart custom palette, it comes with me on a trip, or it's something that I just leave out on my vanity, and if I just want to throw together a look really quickly, then I will go to my custom palette. I just love the fact that they came out with these magnetized palettes where you could just create your own. So it's been so much fun to be able to like use this custom palette and to also like create my custom palette, and just like switch out one shade here and there, and like you get a completely different like look to the palette. It's just been a lot of fun. So the Viseart custom palette would probably be my most used palette. So that is it for this tag. I know I pretty much cheated for all of these categories. I pretty much showed you more than one for all of them, but I hope you enjoyed this video nonetheless, and give this video a thumbs up if you did, and subscribe down below if you haven't already. I'll see you in my next video.